Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to another episode of Sean's Movie Crusades. My name is Sean Wasserkrug, and today we are going to go over the most surprising films of 2019. Now, in the terms for surprising, a lot of these movies are movies that I either went in with low expectations or didn't really know anything about, or one of the ones where I was like, I really don't want to see this movie. Stop trying to make me go see this movie. And then I went and saw it, and I was like, wow, that was actually really good. Hence the word surprising. These movies are relatively high on my list for throughout the year, and movies that after I watched them, they just stayed with me throughout. Now, there are other movies that do that the same way, but they're movies like Endgame, for example, where it's like I knew it was going to be great, and it matched the expectations that I was expecting. Whereas like with Disappointed, they didn't match my expectation. This one exceeded my expectations, either because I just didn't think it was going to be a good film, or I went in with normal expectations and it blew me away. So that's what this list is going to be. So it's definitely a more positive video than the last two we've posted. But let's go ahead and jump right in and go with number 10 on the most surprising films of 2019. Now, this movie I was very, very hesitant about. The plot and just the type of film that it was going into, it was really hard for me to get over it for a while, which is why I kind of waited to see it. But luckily, one of the fellow Movie Crusaders, Jay Burns, said, Sean, get over it and just watch this movie. You will not be disappointed. It's a fantastic film. And that movie is Jojo Rabbit. Now, for me, I was brought up, right? My father's Jewish, so I was kind of brought up in a somewhat of a Jewish type of family. So when it comes to Nazis and World War II Holocaust and stuff like that, it's a very, very sensitive subject for me. I don't take kindly to that stuff. I don't like people talking about it. It just really rubs me the wrong way. So when I saw that Taika Waititi was directing a film where he was playing Hitler, but it seemed like they were just trying to make light of the whole Nazi situation, it was something that I wasn't really wanting to watch or wanting to enjoy for that matter. So it was a movie that I was kind of trying to keep at arm's length, but then I kept hearing how amazing this film was and that you really should check it out and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, damn it, I'm probably going to have to do it. And for the first 20 minutes of watching it, I was very judgmental to it, because I was like, man, they are really trying to make it like not necessarily being fun being a Nazi, but they were trying to just make it like, oh, being a Nazi is not so bad kind of thing. And then finally, I took a step back from it. I talked to Jay, and he's like, dude, just pull yourself out of it and just watch it. And then once I did, I realized that they were making fun of Nazis the entire time, and that it was a satire about how the Nazis are and how ridiculous their mindsets are, and the reasons why they lost the war is because of exactly what they do in Jojo Rabbit. But what I ended up getting while watching this movie, after I got myself out of that mindset, which I know is a hard concept for everyone about this movie, is getting your mindset out of the concept of what you think this movie is going to be. This is easily one of the best coming-of-age tales I've ever seen in films. It's got a stellar, phenomenal cast. It's a fantastic story. And this is labeled as easily one of my favorite films of the year, if not my favorite film of the year. So you will see this movie pop up again here when I get to my best of 2019. I love Jojo Rabbit. It's funny. It's smart. It's dramatic. It literally at one point in the film rips your heart out and slams it on the ground. I was in tears at one moment in the movie. The performances, like I said, of the cast is incredible. Could not talk about this movie more. Could not brag about this movie more. Roman Griffin Davis, who plays Jojo, this kid is fantastic in this film. There are moments where you just want to punch this kid in the face because he's being such a little shit. And then at the next moment, love this kid for how grown up he's becoming from the beginning of the film to the end of the film. This kid goes through a complete 360 of being a huge Nazi a huge Nazi fan. Basically, he basically wants to be Hitler's best friend, which is why his imaginary friend is Hitler. And just growing up full circle by the end of the film. And I'm gonna go ahead and say post spoilers on this. This is definitely a spoiler video. So if you have not seen Jojo Rabbit or any of these films, feel free to skip to the next one on the ranking, because I will be going over certain parts of these movies. But with Jojo, I love how, especially with Taika does a fantastic job with this film. I love how Taika, at the beginning of the movie, he's a very funny kind of, which was also hard to laugh at Hitler, because Hitler was very enjoyable in this film as with Taika playing him. He's very buddy. He's cool. He's very supportive of Jojo. But then halfway through the film, when Jojo starts to see the cracks of the Nazis and just starting to figure out that maybe this is not the smart thing, you start seeing Hitler actually start to become Hitler. He starts to become very needy, very jealous, very forceful, very angry towards Jojo. And it's because that's the last remnants of Jojo's personality that's pro-Nazi, fighting to keep a hold of Jojo's main mindset. Not that there was a brilliant and beautiful way of shaping the story without trying to come out and just blatantly tell you. And I think Taika framed it beautifully. I think Taika acted it beautifully as Adolf Hitler in this particular situation. And I think Roman Griffin Davis did a phenomenal job all the way throughout, from beginning, like I said, being a little Nazi propaganda shithead to I mean, he's 10, but just being grown up by the end of this film and knowing right from wrong and learning to just take that next step forward. Thomasin McKenzie as Elsa. She plays the Jewish girl who is being hidden inside Jojo's home by his mom, played by Scarlett Johansson, which we'll get to. Thomasin McKenzie, I think she should be nominated for supporting actress in this film. I think she's phenomenal in this movie. She works beautifully with Roman as Jojo. How she's very defensive at first, and to the point where she starts to make fun of him for how stupid he thinks, to then kind of turning this into a friendship and potentially more. We don't know, depending on where the film ends. I think that every scene she's in, she is a top-notch performer in this film, and she's definitely someone to look forward to in the years to come. Scarlett Johansson, this is easily she knocked it out of the park this year with Black Widow and Endgame, Marriage Story, which she's probably going to get nominated for, and then I think she should get nominated for this as well, because I think this was her best performance overall. As Jojo's mother, Rosie, I love Scarlett Johansson in this film. When she does that one particular scene where she has to pretend to be Jojo's father because Jojo's just being a little shit, and he demands he wants to speak to his dad, so she flips the tables on him, and then it becomes a loving mother-son moment. Like I said, she does a fantastic. She has a great scene with Thomasin McKenzie, and then of course the big gut-wrenching blow of the film where Rosie passes is such a brutal and Taika, the way Taika shoots it, he does not shy away from this. I mean, he doesn't like show you her face or anything, but he makes you linger in this heartbreaking emotional moment and makes you feel how Jojo feels. And the reason why it's done in such a beautiful and heartbreaking way is because we fell in love with the Rosie character throughout this film, and Scarlett Johansson does a fantastic job. Sam Rockwell as Captain Klinzeldorf. I loved his character as basically a Nazi war hero who starts to see how ridiculous the Nazis are. In each scene, you can kind of see that he's pulling a little bit further away from the Nazis. He's trying to guide Jojo down the right path. And his final scene in the film is one of my favorites of the year with his final scene with Jojo. Heartbreaking as well, incredibly well acted by Sam Rockwell, which is why Sam Rockwell is one of the best actors going today. Alfie Allen had great moments. Stephen Merchant, Archie Yates is Yorkie, easily the best friend that you would always want. Everyone wants a Yorkie in their life, not the dog, but actual best friend. Stephen Merchant, it has one great sequence in this film. Rebel Wilson, not normally a big fan, but she was hilarious in this film. I cannot say enough about how great Jojo Rabbit is as a film, and I probably will be talking about it again when we get to the year's best. But Definitely could go out of your way to see Jojo Rabbit, as it is easily one of the best films of the year. Going to number 9 on the most surprising films of 2019 is going to be a movie that we didn't know we were going to get. It's a Netflix film, so you can find it on Netflix. It is El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie. I love Breaking Bad. It's one of my favorite TV series of all time, and it had a great finale, like pretty much an end point. But the one thing that bugged me about the end point is that we didn't really know what happened to Jesse, played by Aaron Paul. He just kind of drives off, and we hope that he gets away. We hope that he has a better life. We never actually find out. With El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie, we finally get to see what happens to Jesse. The movie literally starts right where the end of the TV series goes. And I was very skeptical about this film because I felt like it was a cash grab. Like, I get it, it's on Netflix, but I feel like it was a cash grab because, like, Breaking Bad ended so well. And then there was just this thing where I was just like, there's no way they're going to be able to make this movie as good as a TV series. This is going to be a failed attempt, and I really don't kind of want to watch it because I don't want to have something sour my feelings towards Breaking Bad. But I obviously made myself watch it, and I could not have been more wrong. Aaron Paul puts on a stellar performance that I know not enough people are going to recognize because it's a TV movie. Because, I mean, it basically effectively is 4 Breaking Bad episodes in one film. But he does a beautiful performance as Jesse. We get the full story arc of Jesse in this film. It's shot beautifully by Vince. Is it Vince Gilliam or Gilligan? Gilligan. I knew I was going to say that wrong. He shoots it beautifully. One of my favorite scenes of the year is the Mexican standoff between Jesse and another gentleman. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, so I'm not going to try. The tenseness of this shot, the way it's shot, like the way the camera angle is at a certain point is a masterclass in filmmaking. Jonathan Banks gets a small comeback as Mike. We get to see Bryan Cranston back as Walt. Skinny. We get Matt Jones and Charles Baker back as Skinny Pete and Badger. If you're a Breaking Bad fan, go out of your way to see this if you haven't already. But let's face it, if you're a true Breaking Bad fan, you would have seen this right when it came out, just like I did. And that's why it's easily in my most surprising of the year, because we didn't know what was going to happen, and then it showed up, and I was hesitant to watch it, and it blew it out of the water. It was a fantastic finale / finish to the Breaking Bad story. That just adds more to the great TV series finale by giving you the final ending to the Jesse story that we all rightfully deserved. Going to number 8 is a movie that was talked about very heavily, very favorably throughout the year. And when I saw the trailers, I was like, okay, this just looks like the female version of this one film that I really liked when I was younger. We'll see how it goes. And that film is Booksmart. When I saw the trailers for Booksmart, I basically said, okay, it's a female version of Superbad, which is not a bad thing at all, because I love Superbad. But it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, I don't feel the uniqueness of it. But Olivia Wilde's directing it, so I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. I really like Caitlin Dever. She plays Amy, so I really wanted to see what she did. I wasn't a big fan of Beanie Feldstein, who plays Molly, but so she was really kind of not a way to get me into the film. But I love Billy Lord. She's in the movie. I also love Skylar Gisondo, for anyone who watches Santa Clarita Diet, which should not have been canceled by Netflix. I love this young core cast that we got with this film, so I gave it a shot, and I was pleasantly surprised about how much I really, really enjoyed this film. It stayed in my top 10 of 2019 for a really, really long time. When I go back and redo my list, my final list, it could creep itself back into the top 10. But Booksmart, it's funny. It's a great high school teenage comedy about trying to stay close to what you're good at, and staying with your friends and not trying to branch out too far, but then finally just taking that last leap and just doing something crazy before you try to move on with the rest of your life. And that's what Amy and Molly are doing. Is they're two high school kids who have played it pretty much on the straight and narrow through all of high school, getting straight A's, getting put into great colleges. And then on the last day of school, finds out that all the partiers, stoners, jocks, and whatever basically got the same colleges that they did, and they kind of half-assed it all the way through college. So Amy and Molly decide, we're going to go out and we're going to do a big rager. We're going to go to one of these high school parties, and we're going to finally actually have some fun on the last night of high school. And so we get to go on that journey with them. They go to multiple parties, and that's the great thing, is that in the beginning of the film, we get to see them in a classroom. We get to see these interactions with all these other classmates, and they feel very one note. But then as we go on through the film, they start to develop more as characters. Yes, they stay, more one notice, but we get more time with them. And you start to like these characters as well, to the point where you're not just a fan of Amy and Molly, but you're a fan of all these other characters as well, especially Billy Lord's Gigi and Skylar's Jared. Until it culminates to, obviously, the big party at the end. Caitlin Dever and Beanie Feldstein work amazing together. Their chemistry is fantastic. You truly believe that they are best friends. The adventures that they go on this one night are memorable and hilarious and fun and heartfelt throughout, that when you do get to the end of the film, it's sad because you just want to be around these two characters more and more. You're not going to get a sequel to this movie. I mean, you could. Any movie now can get a sequel, but I feel like this movie ends at a very definitive note. I really enjoyed this film. If you guys had not checked out Booksmart, go out of your way to try to find it. It's already out on digital and Blu-ray and all that kind of stuff. It's definitely one of the bigger surprises of the year, and I can't wait to see what this young core cast does going forward, because this is one of those movies where I'm going to look back on kind of like Can't Hardly Wait back in, I think it was 95, 96, where at that time, it was a bunch of no-name teenage actors, but by today's standards, it's a bunch of big namers that we all know. And I feel like this film is going to be like that too. So be on the lookout for a lot of these teenage actors and actresses, because in the next 5-10 years, we're going to be looking back as Booksmart as the movie that we first noticed them in, and that is why it's on the most surprising list. Going to number 7, I was so excited for this movie when it came out. So I don't know if it necessarily was a surprise, but it was one of those things where I was hoping it was going to be good, and it was better than what I thought it was going to be, and that is Peanut Butter Falcon. The first time I saw this trailer, I was like, this movie just looks fun. It looks heartfelt. I feel good watching this trailer. Shia LaBeouf has been going through such a hard time over the last, 5 to 10 years because of, him just kind of going through personal things, which I can't wait to see Honey Boy, so I can actually, see him kind of do his reenactment of his life. But he finally, this year, I just really feels that Shia finally breaks out of that stigma shell that people have been putting him in for the last 5-10 years, and really puts on a great performance as Tyler. I loved Shia's character in this. I love his performance in this. Dakota Johnson, she's very hit or miss for me in a lot of things. Obviously, she's the 50 Shades of Grey girl, but I think she does a solid job in the film. She's not as good as what she was last year in Bad Times at El Royale, but she's pretty good in this year. But obviously, the standout performer is Zach Gostigan, who plays Zach, who has Down syndrome, and they could have really kind of went towards the feel sorry for me, I have Down syndrome route, but they don't. They make Zach feel like a normal kid, which he is normal, but obviously he has Down syndrome. But they could have really leaned heavily on, feel sorry for me because I'm different, but instead just made Zach this fully developed character, and you treat him just like a normal person, as you should. And him and Tyler's friendship is beautiful. And also Eleanor, played by Dakota Johnson. It's a very simple film. He lives in a nursing home, Zach does, and he breaks out because he wants to become a professional wrestler, which, someone who's a former professional wrestler, I totally understand that dream, and I totally get where Zach's coming from. So he breaks out of this nursing home, and he tries to go down south, down the river, to where his favorite wrestling school is, who is Saltwater Redneck, played by Thomas Hayden Church. And on the way, he meets Tyler, and they develop this bond, and Tyler helps him try to go down there and reach his goal, and eventually Eleanor joins as well. Like I said, it's a very simple story, but it's very fun. It's very heartfelt. You feel good watching the film. Like I said, Zach puts on a great performance. So does Shia. And it's one of my favorite feel-good movies of the year. I find anyone hard-pressed to watch this and not like this movie. It completely exceeded my expectations going into it. Like, I already had solid expectations, and it went past that, and that is why it is number 7 on the list. Going to number 6, this movie blew me away on how good it was. I remember seeing the trailers for it, and I was just kind of like, all right, I'll give it a watch, but I'm not going to expect anything great from it because I'm not necessarily a big fan of its predecessor. But it definitely did something that I was not expecting it to do, and that was make it one of my favorite films of the year, and that is Dr. Sleep. I'm not a huge Shining fan. I get the appeal of it. I get how it was shot. I don't think it's as good as a lot of people make it out to be. I don't think it's one of the best horror films of all time. I feel like it's very overrated. So when Dr. Sleep was like the 40-year-old sequel to this film, I was just kind of like, okay, sure, we'll see how it is. But the cast is what sold me on it. You cast Ewan McGregor as Dan Torrance. I love Ewan McGregor. I'll probably watch him in anything he's in. You have Rebecca Ferguson, who's quickly climbing up my list as one of my favorite actresses to watch on TV. You also added Cliff Curtis, who I think is a phenomenal actor who's like, he's that guy that you see in a lot of films, but you don't know who his name is. His name's Cliff Curtis. And I'm waiting for him to finally have a breakout role because he's always that great supporting character. This movie is so damn good. It's 2.5 hours. It didn't feel that way. It tells a great story from beginning to end, and Rebecca Ferguson puts on one of my favorite performances of the year. What I love about this film, too, is that you have Ewan McGregor as Dan Torrance, and you have Rebecca Ferguson as Rose the Hat. She's the villain. He's the hero. And more times in a lot of films, you'll get like 70% of the hero in the film and 30% of the villain. This movie felt very 50-50 between Rose and Dan or Danny. They get equal amount of screen time, and you feel for Rose the Hat. Yes, she's an evil character, but she feels for her small, tight-knit family. When they get hurt, like in a normal movie with a villain with a bunch of goons and stuff like that, when they get hurt, they don't care. But in this one, Rose the Hat feels and mourns for her family when they get hurt or injured, and that adds a different element to her character. Like, she's a brutal, vicious woman, but there's this layer to it that makes you just want to watch her on screen. Rebecca Ferguson's performance is top-notch. Ewan McGregor does a fantastic job as Danny as well. Yes, there are certain things wrong with the film overall, such as a certain character's choice that they decided to do, connecting it to the original film. But it also gives you one of the most uncomfortable, hard-to-watch scenes of 2019, and that is the murder of Bradley Trevor, who was brilliantly casted by I'm blanking on his name real quick. Fantastic child actor, Jacob Tremblay. Jacob Tremblay as Bradley Trevor. You're watching this scene as it's unfolding, and you go, is that Jacob Tremblay? Like, did they cast Jacob Tremblay just for this part? And they did. It is the most excruciatingly hard to watch 5 minutes of the year in this film. You're uneasy, you're uncomfortable watching it, but it's brilliant. I commend the director. I think it's Mike Flanagan, who did Haunting of Hill House. For anyone who's a fan of that, he directed this film. He does an amazing job. Mike Flanagan does not shy away from showing you the horrors of what people will do to survive, in a sense. And that is what the murder of Bradley Trevor is incorporating. You're not supposed to understand it. You're not supposed to enjoy it. You're supposed to just sit there and just live that moment with whoever you're watching it with or by yourself. And they make you just breathe that scene in. It is one of the hardest scenes to watch this year, but it's also one of the best scenes to watch this year. Jacob Tremblay puts on a fantastic performance. Rebecca Ferguson puts on a great performance during it. Everyone does. This movie is incredible to watch all the way up to the end. I can say nothing but great things about Dr. Sleep. We have a big spoiler review on the channel, so if you guys want a little more in-depth on that me and Brian Michaels do a great in-depth of that, so check that out. But Dr. Sleep, easily one of my most surprising films of the year and one of my favorite films of the year as well. Going to the top 5. Number 5, this one, I'm very, very surprised that it ended up being in my top 5, because when I saw the trailer for it, I was like, okay, whatever. It is what it is. But I went to watch it, and I was just like, I actually really enjoyed this movie. I like how they adapted it to present day, and the choices that they made, and it did something that I didn't expect it to ever do, and that movie is Child's Play. I like Chucky. I like the Chucky movies. They're not great, but they're not bad either. They're all relatively solid films from one, except for Seed of Chucky. That one's garbage. But all the other ones are relatively solid horror/comedy films about, a killer doll. So when they decided they're going to completely reboot the franchise, even though they're still making movies for the original franchise, it just looked like a train wreck. This was going to go bad. It was not going to work. But they casted Audrey Plaza to play the mother, Karen. I think, Karen was her name. And then they got Mark Hamill to voice Chucky. And I was like, okay, you've got my attention now, because Mark Hamill wouldn't just sign on to this unless it was a good script. What works is that, because obviously with the original Chucky, it was about a serial killer or bank robber or whatever, who basically has the voodoo magic and puts his soul into a doll. And then the whole premise is that he wants to put his soul into a child named Andy so that way he doesn't stay in the doll. Whereas with this one, that's not at all what this story is about. This story is basically they updated with today's technology, so smart tech and stuff like that, and they have a doll that is basically a smart, kind of like an Apple or an Amazon Alexa, but it's in a doll form where this doll can control your house, it can control every aspect of your life, but it's all put through a doll, which in hindsight, why would you do that? But it's trying to make up with today's technology. But we get a defective doll because of a unsatisfied employee just messes with the chip. Nothing evil about it. It's just he messes with the program and basically takes off of its safety protocols and then sends it out. Nothing evil about that. It's just that it's a high-tech AI that has no safety protocols on it. So we get the doll, and it gets sent to Andy, who's played by Gabriel Bateman. And obviously he doesn't, he's like 13 years old. It's a doll. He's mature. He doesn't want to play with the doll. But then he finds out how realistic the doll is and how it communicates with him, because he doesn't have any friends. So he develops his bond with Chucky. And this is the thing that the movie did that I wasn't expecting it to, is that it actually made me feel for Chucky, because Chucky's not necessarily a bad doll. It's just a doll trying to do what its program is, to be a best friend to its owner, aka Andy. So when it sees certain things mistreating Andy, Chucky tries to defend Andy. Yes, he goes about it the wrong way because he murders people, but he's doing it because they are hurting Andy, which I get that. I understand that completely. And then when Chucky gets punished for it, as he should, you feel sorry for Chucky, because it's no different than a dog. If you grow up with a puppy, you treat it, it becomes your best friend. Your dog sees someone trying to hurt you, it's gonna defend you and it's gonna bite that person. But then when that dog gets in trouble, it's confused because it doesn't understand why it's getting in trouble, because it was trying to protect you. And that was what's going on with Chucky. And then eventually he just goes full on evil. But for that first half of that film, you actually feel and understand Chucky and what he's trying to do. And I was not expecting that to happen. And Mark Hamill does a great job in envisioning that as the Chucky character. And I think Child's Play does a great job of kind of taking a formula that we've seen many times before with the old franchise and updating it to today's standards, but also making you feel for the character, which is effectively just a doll. And that is why it's in my most surprising list, because I was not expecting to feel the way I did with that film. And I loved it in that case. Everyone who I talked to is going, dude, Child's Play, they're shocked because they just can't believe that this movie affected me the way it did. I hope it affected everyone else who saw the movie the same way I did. But that is why it is number 5 on the most surprising of 2019. Going to number 4, this one's a little more recent. So is another one in my top 4. It was one of these films that's like the trailer came out. It just looked like another generic kind of film that I've seen 100 times before being advertised, which I never watched them before, but because they just didn't never really spark my interest. And then I finally heard great things about it. So I was like, you know what? Let's just watch it. And it blew me away. And that was Abominable. Abominable came out in the summer. Like I said, there's been a lot of like Yeti, Loch Ness Monster, not Loch Ness Monster, but like Missing Link kind of films that have come out in the last year. And so it just kind of felt like another one of those. The cast doesn't really have any real big names in it. I think Sarah Paulson is probably the biggest name in the movie outside. I mean, you have Chloe Bennett, but if you don't watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you don't know who Chloe Bennett is. You got Eddie Izzard, which great comedian, but maybe not so much by today's standards than he was like 10 years ago. So it doesn't have like a real, like, in terms of names, all-star cast, but it looks beautiful the way it's shot, and it tells a beautiful, heartfelt story. You got the character of Yi, played by Chloe Bennett. She's lost her father. She's kind of lost in a sense of what she wants to do with her life. She's kind of shut herself off from the rest of her family, and she's saving up to go on this trip through China that she had always was supposed to go on with her father. She's a brilliant violinist, but she only will play by herself now because it was her and her father's thing. And then she stumbles along a Yeti who breaks out of this this kind of science facility, and they develop this bond. And her, along with her neighbors, go on this journey to send Abominable, is what they end up calling the Yeti, to send him back to Mount Everest and send him home, while they're also being hunted by the guy who runs the science. He's a big, like, media, like, mobile, billionaire, played by Eddie Izzard. And then there's a doctor, like a zoologist doctor, Dr. Zara, played by Sarah Paulson. As they're hunting Abominable, the kids are trying to get him back home before he gets captured. It's a fun, it's a beautiful, heartfelt story told through this. Abominable is very cute and sweet, and it does amazing magical things in the film. If you're a fan of the violin, this movie really plays on that, and there are scenes that are just so beautifully shot with the chorus of the violin, especially one scene where they're playing in front of a Buddha statue. That is one of my favorite scenes of the year. They do go a little too hard on the villain aspect of it halfway through the film, which to me just doesn't fit with the story that they're telling. But Abominable is a fun film to watch. It was definitely a film that was nowhere near on my radar. And then I basically forced myself to watch it, and I could not be happier that I made myself do it, because it is one of my favorite films of the year. And it's definitely one of these films that I will definitely go back and rewatch from years to come. And that is why it is on the list at number 4. Going to number 3, this one, for the longest time, this was my number 1 for most surprising films of the year. Like, as soon as I watched it, I was like, this is going at the number 1 spot. I don't see anything breaking it. And it ended up dropping to number 3 because there were 2 films prior to this one that I kind of like Abominable. I was not expecting to watch these. I was told to watch them, and they just blew me away. This one just looked like a generic B-grade horror film. It just, like I said, I've seen this movie 100 times before. This didn't look any different. It didn't look like it was going to blow me away. Then I started to hear rumblings of how this movie was a lot of fun and it was really good. So I went and watched it, and I was blown away by how awesome this movie was. Coming in at number 3 is Crawl. It's a very basic storyline. I mean, it's not anything crazy. It's a very simple story. You basically have a young woman attempting to save her father during a Category 5 hurricane. She finds herself trapped in a flooding house and must fight for her life and her father's life against a bunch of alligators, because they're being risen from the swamp and kind of brought in with the hurricane. The way this movie is shot, the way these action sequences work with these alligators keeps you on the edge of your seat, it makes you jump, and I'm not a big jumper when it comes to watching movies, but this movie made me jump. I love the way that's shot. Most of the film, they're trapped in like the cellar / basement, with anywhere between 1 to 3 alligators, and the tension is super high the entire time. You're holding your breath watching this movie because it's just believable. There's no bad actors. There's 2 main actors. You got Kaya Scodelario, she plays Haley, and Barry Pepper plays her dad, Dave, who I love. Barry Pepper, I think he's an underrated actor. These are the main 2 characters. I mean, you do get some occasional people who come along, but these are the focal points. It's these 2 in this house against these alligators. And they're not like, you have this dynamic between the father and the daughter that they kind of have to work with. That maybe it works, but it doesn't work. But for this film, it's fine for what it is. The main part of this film is these 2 people trying to survive these alligators who are hungry, who are aggressive because they've been taken out of the swamp, and they are basically in an area where food. And so they're highly aggressive. They're in dark path areas, so an alligator can pop up out of nowhere. It's so much fun to watch. It's definitely something that I highly recommend to anyone who likes kind of that intense kind of film. Or animal films, or even horror. It definitely, took me by surprise, and that's why it's number 3 on the list. I could not recommend Crawl more. And it might even be in my best ofs of 2019, because that's how much it surprised me on how good it actually was. Going to my number 2, this one's not going to be a big surprise because it's on a lot of people's best of lists for the year. It's even on mine. It's going to be an Oscar favorite, but it was a movie that I had zero interest in seeing. I had no plans on watching this at all because it's not my kind of film. But I kept hearing how amazing it was. I kept hearing from all the people that I follow on my own saying, you have to see this movie, you have to see this movie. So I finally broke down and said, fine, I'll see it. And it blew me away at how amazing this movie is. So that's why it surprised me. Like, it's not a surprise that this movie is as good as it is because everyone loves this movie, but it was a surprising because I almost just blatantly ignored this film. I was not going to watch it. I wasn't going to give it a shot. And I'm so glad I did. Coming in at number 2 for most surprising of 2019 is Parasite. I'm not a big foreign film viewer. I'm not a big fan of having to read the subtitles. Now, I will admit, when I watch movies at home, I have subtitles on because a lot of people, you have that thing where the background noise is louder than the vocals. So I have the subtitles on so I can see what they're saying if I don't hear it. But I don't like having to spend the entire film watching the subtitles and then looking up and looking down because I can't obviously understand what they're saying. So I'm not a big foreign movie watcher, which, yes, I know you're going to go, Sean, there's so many phenomenal films that you have not watched because they're foreign films. I get that. I'm broadening my mindset when it comes to that. But this was the step forward that made me do it. So I watched Parasite. This film is so unique. It's shot so beautifully by director Bong Joon-ho. And I'm going to and I did this in my review, which is my most viewed video, by the way. So thank you all. Apparently you guys really like Parasite too, because you really cared about my thoughts on it. I'm not going to say these actors and actresses' names because I'm going to butcher them. And I don't want to, because these guys deserve way more respect than that. Just know that the story follows 2 families of different class. You got the rich family, and you got a poor family. And the way that even though I've been spoiling some movies I'm talking about, I'm not going to spoil this one because this one you just need to see it to understand how great it is, and to not know what's going on with this film is kind of the beauty of this film. So all these other movies I've been kind of spoiling, I'm not going to spoil this one, but these two families, the way they intertwine together, and when you find out where this film's going in the first half, is kind of this beautiful game that you're watching. You're just kind of watching this game of chess between these families and how each chess piece is being moved and chess pieces are being taken off the board. You're just watching this as it's happening, and it's beautifully constructed. And then when we get to this one part of the movie, and I'll just call it the storm, and anyone who's watched the movie knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's one of my favorite sequences of the year. When this storm thing happens, it takes the story that we know and it flips it on its head. And then the movie turns almost into a horror film to a point, and all the way up to we get to the inevitable end, which is a batshit crazy ending. This film is incredible. It deserves all the recognition that it's getting. It definitely believe in the hype when it comes into Parasite. Phenomenally acted by the cast that I'm not going to say their names because I'm going to butcher them. Bong Joon-ho does a phenomenal job directing this film. It looks gorgeous. The story is amazing. The cast is great. If you have not seen Parasite yet, go out of your way to see it. I get it. It's a foreign film. I was up against it too, but definitely go out of your way to watch this film. You will not be disappointed. Parasite is one of the best films of the year, if not one of the best films of the decade. And you will definitely put yourself at a disservice if you do not check it out, which is why it is number 2 on the list. Coming in at number 1, this is also a movie that I watched recently, but it's been out for a little while now. And the reason why it's number 1 over the likes of Parasite and Crawl is because of the way this movie made me feel. Like, yes, all these movies have made me feel something. That's why they're on this list. But this one really just made me kind of like the character in this film, look at myself in the mirror and say, you're better than what you are right now. Be like this person to a point. And strive to be better. Strive to make yourself better. And that is why this movie is number 1 on my list, because that's exactly what this character has to do. This character is kind of just going through the motions of their life. They're unmotivated. They don't care. And then finally they just have to look at themselves in the mirror and realize this is not the life I want to live anymore. And I need to change or I'm going to die. And when they do that, it's beautifully done. And that is why my number 1 most surprising film of 2019 goes to Brittany Runs a Marathon. Like I said, when I said in my review, I'm not a fan of Jillian Bell. I haven't been a fan of her in anything I've really seen her in. Not necessarily the movies, but just her performances in those movies. So that was kind of the main thing that was keeping me from watching this film. But I had heard great things. Like I said, Perry Nemiroff, she watched it and she said she was going to join and run the New York City Marathon because of this film. So I was like, well, wow, that's crazy that she watches a movie and that made her go and do this thing. So I figured I got to go out of my way to try to check this out. And I did, and I could not have been happier checking this out. Jillian Bell puts on a phenomenal performance as Brittany, as a person, like I said earlier, who is just sad and unhappy, but was unwilling to change anything about it. She just goes out and drinks and does drugs. She's overweight. And she's just kind of stuck in a rut. And she has a best friend who just kind of talks down to her. Until she finally is looked at into the face from a doctor saying, you need to lose this much weight, or because I'm worried about your health. And then she finally looks herself in the mirror and realizes, I need to do this. And she puts her foot forward and she joins a runner's club and she starts to feel better about herself. She starts to lose weight. She starts to gain confidence. But she's still a flawed character. She's had a bad personal life with her childhood, which has made her unwilling to accept help from people. And when she does, she feels like it's a handout and that it's people looking down on her. And in turns, she's her own worst enemy in this film. So, like, she has to get over that fact. And as watching her kind of go through this and try to grow as a person while also trying to make herself healthier is a beautiful journey that we go on with Brittany. And that is why I love this movie, because it made me kind of also look at myself and go, Sean, you can be better than what you are. You can get yourself back to the way you used to be. It's not over for you. Go out and do it. And I hope that movie does that for a lot of people. Apparently it did it for Perry as it did for me. It's got a great cast surrounding her as well. You got Lil Rel Howery. He does a great job. You got Michaela Watkins. You've got Micah Stock. You've got I can never say the guy's name right, but he plays Jaren, so I'm not going to butcher his name again. But he's great in the film. I love the cast. I love the story. Like I said, Jillian Bell does a great job in the film. I could not recommend this film more. It's on Amazon Prime for free, so all you got to do is go on there to watch it. You don't have to buy it. It's just go there, click play, and watch this movie. I hope it does what it did for me as it does for you when you watch it. And just know that if you are not your best self, that you can be your best self. And that's what this movie did for me. I don't know why it did that to me. Maybe I was just in the right place at the right time when I watched it to read it to me that way, but that is why it is my most surprising film of 2019. So that's the list. Going to the full list again, in case people were jumping around and not watching the whole thing, which, like I said last time, shame on you. Coming in at number 10 was Jojo Rabbit. Number 9 was El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie. 8 was Booksmart. 7 was Peanut Butter Falcon. 6 was Dr. Sleep. 5 was Child's Play 2019. 4 was Abominable. 3 was Crawl. 2 was Parasite. And 1 was Brittany Runs a Marathon. I hope you guys enjoyed this list. I hope some of these movies are movies that you maybe had not given a chance because you didn't think they were going to be good. And maybe this list is going to help you watch these films and go, wow, I cannot believe these movies were good, and I was almost not going to watch them. Thus, some of these films that I was that way with as well. So I hope this list did that for you. If you guys like this list, go ahead and hit that like button on the video. If you like this list is worth sharing, go ahead and hit that share button as well. But most importantly, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos that pop up on Sean's Movie Crusades. And of course, don't forget to follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Coming up next, we're going to be doing the most anticipated films of 2020. We did it last year. We're going to do it a different way. Last year, I just kind of went through the release dates from January to December. This year, I'm going to give you my top 20 most anticipated films of 2020. And we'll see exactly what films fall on that list and what movies that you should be looking for / excited for going into the new year. And then, of course, we'll be doing we'll get the rest of the Movie Crusaders together. We're going to go through the years of the decade and go over our top 5 films of each year all the way up to the inevitable best of 2019, which will probably be out later at the end of January. So we can all kind of get all these Oscar movies watched that are getting released in January. So be on the lookout for that, as well as any other movie reviews that pop up on the channel. And until next time, in case I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.